Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome back to another amazing episode of The Healthy Healer. So, today we are really honored to have our guest here today, someone who's really had a full life. She lives herself in Tennessee, and I think you'll get that from her accent very early on. A beautiful woman, both inside and out, who's had plenty of accolades. And maybe I'll touch base a little bit on her bio to kind of give you a little bit of a context of who we're dealing with here today. So Mary Ellen, is it Ciganovich?
Ciganovich. That's correct.
Ciganovich. Okay,
Yeah.
Mary, who was raised in Atlanta and now lives in Tennessee with her husband.
Mhm.
Mary Ellen is a graduate of the University of Georgia in education, and she's been a teacher and taught in multiple different states in the country. Mary Ellen has many different awards over the years. Some of them are fairly recent. She's been an executive producer for Conversations Live radio station, as well as executive editor for Conversations Live magazine. She's co-hosted a number of shows. She's written 3 books and had the kindness to send me all 3 of them. Healing Words, Life Lessons to Inspire. Truth, TRUTH, Taking Responsibility Unleashes True Healing. That's the acronym. And Healing Words, Life Lessons to Inspire, the second edition, as well as Truth Lives, which was
Mhm.
just released in November of 2021.
Mhm.
Mary Ellen has been in Miracle Moment and Miracle Minute and has been an influencer as a social network player since 2011. On social media, she likes to go by Ask Mary Ellen. Here, I'm going to call her Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen has been a featured writer, a featured speaker, a featured spiritual writer for multiple different magazines over time, has been on multiple radio and television appearances all over radio and TV, including PBS and NBC. And even recently as 2021, Mary Ellen was nominated for Woman of the Year award for the Wellness Women Celebrating Life. And I'm not. I guess the announcement for who won has already come past us. I'm not sure if Mary Ellen won. We can find that out. Either
Yeah.
way, the nomination's pretty impressive. Mary Ellen has multiple ways you can get a hold of her online, and this will all be listed in the show notes. Mary Ellen, thank you for so much for coming on The Healthy Healer. It's just an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fred. It is such a blessing and honor. I'm so excited to be here with you today and all of your wonderful listeners.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great to have you, and great. I like to entertain my listeners with multiple levels of healers, people who have gotten their journey uniquely, but are clearly landed on a path where they're causing positive change, where they're actually transforming lives in a upward or upgraded direction of the people they come in contact with. And Mary Ellen, after reading a bit of your books and looking at your bio and having our conversations that we've had in the last several weeks, I could see that you certainly meet that criteria. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Oh, wow. What do I do? Well, I still call myself a teacher or an educator, although I'm educating in a different way. Um, I grew up going from one illness to another. At the age of 6, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and I was always told that I couldn't get married and I couldn't have kids. Of course, I was 6 years old in first grade, and I was like, what are you talking about? And I didn't realize that there were actual laws. In 1958 was the year. There were laws in 1958 that said people with epilepsy couldn't marry or have kids because they thought at that time incorrectly that it was genetically passed. And of course, that has been done away with, although some of those laws are still on the books. So, I grew up with a relatively low self esteem, yet I always looked like I was good. And my mother used to say, well, at least you don't look like you have it. And I'd be like, what do you mean? What am I supposed to look like?
Right.
So went through all that. I went ahead and went to college, even though mom said, not to tell anybody at college. I joined a sorority. And one of the things I did was I told my sorority sister that I had epilepsy. And she just looked at me and she goes, well, so what? It must be a very mild case. And I'm like, yeah. But that was the first time I began to say, what do you mean, so what? And I began to think that I had all these erroneous societal teachings that I'd been brought up with. You know, I didn't have, and I understand now that my mother was trying to keep me safe. I got that. Okay. Yet, I did get married to my first husband. I'm married now for 25 years to my second husband. So I guess the didn't get married thing didn't work. But,
Yeah.
and then when my daughter was 3, I thought she had epilepsy also. So my husband took her for an EEG, and the whoever diagnosed her said yes, she has petit mal. Well, I just broke down. I just totally had a breakdown. Had a tubal ligation, so I couldn't have any more kids. I just felt so totally guilty, and I began to think about things, and I was living close. We were fortunate. My first husband was with IBM, and we were living in Connecticut at the time. And there's a Yale New Haven seizure clinic up there, and a Dr. Richard Matson works up there. And I couldn't get an appointment with him. So I drove up there and I just sat in his office. I wore a really foo-foo great outfit, and I just sat in his office. And I was going to sit there until he saw me. Well, he did see me. And to make a really long story short, he put me in the seizure clinic first, and then he put my daughter in. And he took me aside and he said, Mary Ellen, he said, I don't know who diagnosed her or why, but you have a perfectly healthy, normal child. And it was at that point, I didn't think about going back and suing a doctor or whatever, because see, that was my greatest fear coming true. I had to be responsible for the choices I made. And I began to think outside the box as if there was no box there. Okay, why did I buy into that picture? And she'd been on Tegretol for a couple of years or more, and her first grade teacher worked with her coordination. Well, she's now like 45 or 46, and she climbs mountains all over the world. So she's very healthy. And then after my first husband woke up one morning, he left. He just said, I don't love you anymore, and left. And I was like, okay. And I moved with my daughter back to Atlanta, and I started playing tournament racquetball. And when I would play racquetball, and I would get dizzy, and I would start seeing 2 balls. And I went to an eye doctor who put me on. He said, I'll put you on prednisone if you promise to see your neurologist tomorrow, because I was still seeing a neurologist for my epilepsy. Okay, fine. So the prednisone took the pain away from my eye. I had a really sharp pain in the back of my eye. And I thought about not going, but yet I had promised him. So I thought, okay, I'll go. So I took my daughter out of school, took her with me because I had no one to look after her. And I went to my internist, and he's just shaking his head. And he sent me to my neurologist. They put me in an MRI, and they said, well, you have multiple sclerosis. And I was like, the year was 1989. And I just looked at my daughter, and, we'd heard about it, but I was very fortunate that I did not have a negative picture in my mind of what MS was.
Right.
So I just figured to myself, well, I handled the epilepsy. Okay. I guess I can handle this too. And like I said, there weren't any medications at the time. So I went home, and the next day I called the National MS Foundation, and I said, would you send me all of your literature on MS? Well, about a week later, I got this packet of literature. And in 1989, it was the most negative, awful packet of literature. My middle school students will tell you that I don't get mad often, but when I get mad, you just better leave the room. Yeah. So I called the MS Foundation, and I said, how dare you send out this packet of literature like this? And they said, well, we hate to tell you. And I said, I hate to tell you. And I just slammed the phone down. And I took the literature, and of course didn't have a shredder back then, but I tore it up and I threw it in the trash. And it wasn't that I was denying that I had MS. I knew my human form has it to deal with. But in my soul, in my spirit, in my true essence, there is no MS to deal with. It is there for me to learn from. It is there when I get stressed, when I get too hot, all of these triggers that I have learned. And I have found natural ways to handle my particular case of MS. Now, I do use a few prescriptions, and my neurologist just shakes his head. He goes, Mary Ellen, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it.
Mm.
And it was, in that journey, when I was diagnosed with the MS, I began studying Ayurvedic healing, which is a form of healing from India. And I found many cures for my MS, learning what dosha I am. Dosha is a body type. And I also studied Chinese herbs, and I studied many different forms of alternative healing to find ways that would work for me. And many of the things that I learned are the truths or the truth of the day that I now teach people, because anyone can use any of these truths at any time, and they will work for any person. Anyway, that's part of the story. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does that lead? Where is it? What is it truth? What kind of things did you learn? What kind of things did you bring forward?
Well, truth, see, the way our society uses the word truth is incorrect. The truth that I'm talking about are
And I
not
know
fact.
the word truth actually makes it into the title of your books, like on a couple occasions, actually.
Right. See, I'm not talking about a fact or an opinion. I'm talking about something like a physics principle that will never change. Like what you focus on expands, what you think about happens. That is a truth. To the extent you think about what you don't want, you're giving energy to what you don't want, and what you don't want will happen in your life, whether you like it or not. You know, when you get a diagnosis of anything, or when you have pain, pain is a call for healing. Any diagnosis is there for you to learn from. And it all begins with love. It all begins with you learning to love yourself. Okay. And in learning to love yourself and accept yourself just the way you are, then you go, okay, I can handle this. And you drop the fear. We are taught so much in our society, so many negative, fear based things. And I teach love, just unconditional love, no judgments, no expectations, and no motives, just pure love. Like 99% of all assumptions are false. When you ever look at anybody and assume something, usually it's false. When communication is so important, because when you communicate, you should always communicate with picture words, because then the other person will hear you. And if you communicate with any kind of negative word, or especially the word but, anytime you say the word but, afterward the word but, people will quit listening to you, because they know everything after that is going to be negative.
Interesting. Yeah. The power of words,
Mm-hmm.
power of the choice of words that we use is what you're emphasizing here.
Exactly. And there's, like, I know when I first moved to Chattanooga, I waited for about 6 months to go to a neurologist who was supposed to be the best in town. So I said, okay, well, when you go into a neurologist's office, it's really depressing. So, even though I have epilepsy and MS, I would wear 3-inch heels and a big hat and some kind of foo-foo outfit. And I'd walk in there, and I had my MRI forms, because back then they had the films. And I had those with me. And I know he looked at me and he goes, well, you might have epilepsy, but you don't have MS. People with MS don't walk in here in 3-inch heels. And I said, well, here are my films. You can look at them. And he said, well, what shot are you on? Well, because the shots came out in 1992. And I just chose not to take any of them. And I said, well, I don't take any of the shots. I've chosen to handle my case differently. And he said, well, 100% of my patients are on the shots. And I know you don't know me this well, and I usually wouldn't do this, but I just looked at him and I said, "Well, what pharmaceutical company is paying you off?"
Yeah.
And he took my chart, Dr. Fred, he threw it across the room and it landed on the floor. And he told me to get out of his office.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. By the time I got to my car, I was shaking. I was crying. I was like, what did I do?
Just in response to the question, he didn't even answer he just got upset that you asked him that.
Well, to the extent he got upset, he told me his answer.
Right. That he
Uh-huh.
was being bought off in some ways by the pharmaceuticals,
Well, you
or at
know,
least highly influenced.
yeah, put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are a lot of doctors out there. I have very good doctors that work with me, and they know that I know my body. And if I call them and I say, I need XYZ, they know that's what Mary Ellen needs. Many people out there do not know their body. They don't know their triggers. They don't know what their body needs or what their body doesn't need. And so they go, well, the doctor said to take it, so I should take it. Well, the doctor is a person. Just like the doctor who diagnosed my daughter with epilepsy and she didn't have it. They were just trying to do the best that they could. And Dr. Matson told me any 3-year-old's EEG would be abnormal. You know, so we have to look at doctors as people, and we have to know our bodies. And what I tell my clients, I don't give medical information. I'm not a medical person. I will tell them alternative methods if they ask me. And I do work with doctors to give different diagnosis so the people will hear them correctly. Because so many times people hear a diagnosis, and what do? They go into fear mode. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be like this, and I'm going to be like this. Chill, quit your worry, quit your anxiety. Just create the picture of what you want in your life. Quit creating a picture of what you don't want.
hmm So, do you believe at this point that you still have multiple sclerosis and epilepsy?
Well, I know Dr. Kadri told me I could go off my epilepsy medication. And I'm like, and I have in the past had 3 grand mal seizures. Oh, I haven't had a seizure in probably 25 years. But I just looked at him and I said, if I have to take one pill or 3 times a day for the rest of my life, it's not broke, don't fix it. I can drive, I can do things. And as far as the MS, yeah, I have hard days with the MS. I have
Mhm.
very hard days. I've woken up before and not had eyesight, or I've had eyesight, but I will see 4 of everything, or I'll get the pain in the back of my eye, or I know what my triggers are. Basically,
Mhm.
I can feel it coming on.
Mhm.
And I have learned, see, MS is a virus. It's not a contagious virus, but it is in the viral category of like chickenpox and herpes and those viral things. So there are some antivirals that I take when I need them for me that
Mhm.
seem, that seem to work.
Mhm. So, what does that mean? What does that mean for you to carry on with these sort of diagnoses or diseases and illnesses? How does that affect your higher being to know that you've been, let's say, that you have been touched or afflicted with these conditions?
Well, see, Dr. Fred, I don't look at it that way. I feel more like I was blessed with these conditions.
I see. That's pretty interesting.
And I was blessed with them so that I could learn from them, so I could learn about me. And so that I would not be able to write these books. I would not be able to talk about truth if I had not gone. I mean, besides epilepsy and MS, I've had cat scratch fever, the Guillain-Barré syndrome. I couldn't walk for 3 months. I mean, there are a whole, I have von Willebrand's, it's a bleeding disorder or whatever. But see, I don't think about any of them. I mean, today's a good day. I'm sitting here talking with you and we're having a great conversation, I think. And, I don't look at it as being, oh, poor little me. I went through that when I was a kid. with
Right.
my parents. Oh, poor little Mary Ellen, she's sick again. Oh, poor little Mary Ellen. And I refused to be that way as an adult.
Right. And tell me how this all flows into the writing, the books that you've written. How did that land that you started putting pen to paper or putting your fingers on the keyboard and actually banging out these beautiful books?
You'd have to talk to God about that one. I literally began hearing the vignettes and healing words, life lessons to inspire. I started hearing these messages, and I knew, I always know God's always with me, and God and I talk all the time. Okay, fine. And He kept telling me these messages about awareness and love and ego and death and just all these different things. And I said, look, quit bugging me. I'm not going to write them down. Look at me. I got glow in the dark blonde hair. I got long fingernails. Nobody's going to listen to me. And God comes back and He goes, why do you think I put you through all the hard things you've been in? And I was like, oh, thanks a lot. Appreciate that. So I did. I'd been married to Pete for a short time, and I just started writing, and I could not stop. I mean, literally 5 legal pads later, because I wrote longhand. And I finally, and Pete thought I was having a nervous breakdown because I wrote all the way to Atlanta. We were living in Pinehurst, North Carolina at the time. And then while he was working, I was writing. And then he came back and he goes, okay, we can go shopping. And I was like, can't go shopping. I got to write. He goes, you can't go shopping. Excuse me. So I came home from that trip and put those legal pads on my printer by my computer. And I said, there, done, God, get off my case.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would go in there to clean that room, to vacuum that room, I would look at those legal pads. And so one day when Pete was out of town, I just sat down and I started transposing everything I'd written. And it became the first book. And then it was picked up by Tape Publishing the first time. And then in order to get that out, I began doing a truth of the day on the internet, which I still do. And because I just wanted to add some positivity to the internet. And I thought, well, what would be like what I have in healing words, but would inspire someone, you know? So I started doing Truth of the Day, which is where the Truth book came from. And then Truth Lives, my latest book, is similar to the Truth of the Day, yet I'm attempting to teach our society a different way of thinking, to think that you are responsible for your health. You are responsible for your choices. Quit blaming the other person. Because the philosophy I teach people here at Real Health, and Real stands for really enthusiastic about life, is a philosophy of 1 finger out, 3 fingers back. Meaning the good you see in others is the good you have inside yourself. And conversely, the things about other people that you don't like, and it hooks you and you just can't let it go, is God's way of showing you what you need to work on in yourself. And you always need to step back. And it's not that of course, they probably did something incorrect. Why are you seeing it? Why are you hearing it? And why are you feeling it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about Truth of the Day. What is that even like? What I have not heard one, but I see that you actually do them every day. What is it on iHeartRadio?
Well, I was doing them over iHeartRadio. Now I post them just on, let's see, Instagram, 2 pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter and Threads or whatever.
Right, and I've seen those posts on Facebook. And how do those get inspired? Is there a new one every day, or when do
Yeah,
you write those?
there is a new one every day. And just like Healing Words, I don't write them. I sit down in a quiet spot and I usually turn on some music, and I'll usually ask God, what does He want the people to hear? What do people need to hear? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I'll have this ongoing fight with them. I'll like, God, I just wrote about fear 2 days ago, and it's been interesting because it totally comes from my higher power, which I call my authentic self or my real self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your core. And I teach people to get out of their ego mind or because your thoughts, your thinking, that's what gets you into trouble. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
mind that you identify with gets you into trouble. But your authentic self connects with your higher power and will always tell you what to do. If you always follow what I call your knowings and get out of your beliefs, because your beliefs always include a doubt, but your knowings will tell you exactly what you need to do, exactly what you need to eat, exactly what you need, who you need to speak to, and how you need to speak to them.
Interesting. Yeah. And I hear a lot of God in what you're talking about. How has God been an important part of your life since a child, or when has this become such a key feature for who you are?
Well, I was raised Catholic and my father was a different religion, so we didn't go to church that often. I wanted to go as a child. God became a central part in my life. I took a whole bottle of medicine once trying to kill myself.
Oh, wow. How old were you then, Mary Ellen?
I see. I was just getting out of, I was finishing, I had just graduated from college and I'd gone through a hard time, or I was just finishing up. So it was probably 20, 21, I don't know, 22, something like that.
Hmm.
And I'd gone to the psychiatrist at the University of Georgia for some help, and his answer was to make me part of the Me Too movement. And I didn't want to go back to him, and nobody would listen to me. Nobody, no, they said, oh, he wouldn't do that. And I said, I can't go back to them. And they said, you have to go back to them. So nobody would listen. I took a whole bottle of pills and laid down, and the guy that became my first husband found me. I was in a coma for 3 days. And I remember coming out of my body. I remember going to it was very dark. Okay. It wasn't like hellfire, thank God. And I remember it being cold. And I remember just floating up there. And then I remember this bright white doorway opening up on my left. And I was like, there's a light, So I just thought I'd float over there. So I floated over to the doorway, and this man just stood in front of it with his arms, just like you see the picture of Christ. And I kept looking beneath his robes, and it was so bright, and it was so white, and there was so much love on the other side. And I was like, oh, I want to come in. Oh, I want to come in. And I remember Christ telling me, Mary Ellen, you have a lot of good to do in the world. You have to go back. And it was just like a door slamming. And I was awake and in intensive care, and I had tubes going out everywhere. And they'd already told my mom and dad I wasn't going to make it.
Hmm. So that was really a turning point for you right at that moment.
That was a big one, although I didn't believe it at first. I just figured it was some kind of dream. And they put me in the psych unit, of course, and the psychiatrist who had done the damage came up there, and I looked at him and I said, you better get me out of here. I'm going to blow the whistle on you. So unfortunately, I didn't get any assistance, which is my fault. So I had a little bit longer journey to go because I had things I needed to learn yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I began studying A Course in Miracles at the Atlanta Awareness Center, probably in 1986, before I was diagnosed with MS. And that was very good for me because it got me to look at things differently. Because one of the ladies there, I went up to her, and she was one of the spiritual teachers. And she was talking about that there aren't any problems, they're just perceptions. And so I went up to her afterward and I was like, Kay, what do you mean there aren't any problems? I have epilepsy. I was just riddling off my problems, right? And she looked at me and she had a really gruff voice, right? And she goes, Mary Ellen, the problem is you see a problem. Oh, I was so mad. I just went home. I was livid. And I remember I was asleep and I just sat bolt upright in bed and I said, that's right. The problem is I see the problem. The problem is me. It's not out there. It's me. And that totally changed my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's a mindset that that there are no actual problems inherently is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. It's just you can make it a problem or you can make it a misperception and learn from it and go forward. And always take something back and say, okay, what do I need to learn from having this in my life?
Right.
It's just like the MS. God didn't put that in my life to punish me. He didn't put me in there because he didn't like me. I mean, he loves all of us the same.
Right.
He put that in my life so I could learn from it.
Right.
And to the extent I embraced it with love instead of fear and break it apart, I can handle it. And when I get into my fear mode, it comes roaring out like the monster it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Mary Ellen, you're a mother as well?
Yes, I have one daughter, Stephanie, and she's the one that was diagnosed with epilepsy, but she doesn't have it. She is a physician's assistant in Billings, Montana, and has climbed 5 of the 7 summits in the world to the top.
Wow. Beautiful. Does that include Everest then?
She went to Everest. She has to go back to Everest to the summit. She went to Everest to the base camp, and she summited Island Peak, which is the next mountain. She's got Everest to summit, and there's a mountain in Antarctica she has to do. She lived in Antarctica for 6 months, but she wasn't a mountain climber then.
Uh-huh. Is it Machu Picchu? Machu Picchu, is that one of them? Is that one of the
She's been to Machu. She's done all the Argentina, all South America. She's done all those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that doesn't sound like someone who's afflicted with epilepsy or anything like that.
Well, I hang glide and I paddleboard and I go whitewater rafting and zip lining. And, I'm going to enjoy life and have fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let anything hold me back.
Yeah, and that's you. You're saying you do that stuff. You do whitewater rafting and hang gliding.
Yep.
Wow. When's the last time that you hang glided?
Actually, it's been a little while. Yeah, of course, I go tandem with an instructor, but I've been up to 4,000 feet before
Wow.
they pull the cord. And it is so, you talk about being close to God. Oh my gosh, it's wonderful.
Fantastic.
It's
Wow.
really, I've been, I guess, 6 or 7 times. You know,
So you said you hang glide and you whitewater raft and zip
and,
line and
and
what else?
paddle boarding
Paddleboarding.
on
Beautiful.
the river.
Fantastic. That's good that
That-
you keep yourself in such active shape and really taking advantage of life, what life has to offer, having fun.
Well, I've always been a big workout nut, and even now, I work out every day. We have a gym downstairs in our home. Oh, we have, and I used to teach yoga and Pilates and all that, so I pretty much know what to do.
Well, that's really great. The purpose of this conversation is for me to interview or to spotlight what I call healthy healers, people who are doing their own healing, who are helping others through healing as well. So, what is it when you say "Who are you"? When you take on the question like "Who are you?" What is your answer to that?
I am an inspirational mindfulness person who would love to assist anyone on their life journey to see things differently and create the life you want, because you can create whatever life you want. If you want to change your life, change your thoughts. And
Yeah.
I have plenty of activities here at Real Health that I've written myself that will help anyone through grief, divorce, relationships, parenting, all kinds of things.
Hmm. And is this primary? Are most of your audience women, or do you get women and men, or what? How do you find? How does it actually shake out?
I've had all ages. I've had families. Of course, I taught middle school, so I've had teenagers. I have a lot of people looking for relationships. I have a lot of people, who are getting divorced. And I try to counsel them, and because they want to find someone else. And I'm like, please learn about yourself first.
Right.
Learn because if you don't, what you're going to do is you're going to find the same relationship over and over and over again.
Right, exactly. I know that's true for me and true for everyone else too.
Mhm.
Wherever I go, there I am, and
Yeah, that's true.
I'm the reason that it's no coincidence that all my relationships look the same, you know,
Yeah, that's true.
because they
And
all include me.
yeah, I mean, people, they make me laugh a lot, you know.
Yeah, people are funny.
Mhm.
Mary Ellen, if people want to follow you or learn from you or become a client of yours or get your books or, you know, where do they have to go to find you?
It's really simple. Go to askmaryellen.com, 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 and everything is there.
That's fantastic. That's a great space and a really great website. And we'll have that on the show notes as well. Mary Ellen, it's been a pleasure having you. And thank you for
Thank
entertaining us with your beauty and your philosophies. And is there anything else you want to sort of leave of our listenership with? Maybe if you have one thing you want to tell everybody in the world.
Well, I want people to come from love, you know. Quit with the negativity, quit with the complaining. If you want our world to be loving and kind and compassionate and positive, then it all begins with you. It begins with you and you and you and you and me and Dr. Fred and everyone. Because when we become that way, the rest of the world becomes that way. And
Right.
wouldn't that be wonderful?
It would be for sure. Now more than ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. It's been a deep pleasure having you on. Mary Ellen Ciganovich has been our guest today. Thank you for hanging on. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And thank you, listeners. If you like the show, please feel free to comment or share or like so that this helps us get out to a greater group of audience just like you. So thank you so much again, Mary Ellen, and take care of yourself. And we will catch you on the flip side. I look forward to our future relationship.
I hope so. Thank you, Dr. Fred. Bye-bye.
Bye.